Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here. Today I'm talking to you about speed paints, and I have to say, okay, look, I only paint with contrast paints, and I think because of that, I am possibly one of the most qualified people to talk about the way most people are going to use speed paints. Look, if you want to know how to expertly mix them and use them in airbrushes and all this, that's not me. I'm colorblind. I don't like painting. Yet I still managed to get armies on the table. I still managed to paint acceptably well when I put my mind to it. And I know the best way to get, if I'm honest, I feel pretty decent results out of contrast paints. So I want to review the speed paint range. Of course, this is only the starter box. I don't have access to anything else, which means I was a little bit limited on the colours that I could use, so I couldn't go crazy. But here we have one of these is a speed paint, one of these is a contrast, so we're going to look at that. We're also going to have a quick look at what you can do with speed paints. I decided to go with this miniature because it's two models in one, which logically meant that I could use more colours, although this is a standard speed paints over metallic test. And then we also have, as so many people are concerned about, we have a bunch of different colours in a row, and then what happens if you apply water to them? Does speed paints, do they start to reactivate and mix? Which is something that a lot of people care about, but I do want to state, the way that I paint, this would never ever be an issue. Because I'm a one thick coat boy. If I have to apply two coats, I'm going to use a real paint. Why would I use contrast? Now, to be clear, before we get stuck into it, if you are a good painter, you enjoy painting, speed paints are an excellent addition to your toolbox. Great. There's no reason to buy them. This is my summary very quickly. There you go. If you just want one paint and you want to go ahead and paint, get models on the table, contrast or speed paint, that's the real question, right? Because if you're a good painter, you're just going to buy them because they're great. They come in a dropper bottle, similar to how contrast, but they're literally contrast in a dropper bottle. They're the same colours. First up, we have two Ely boys. I don't know what they really are. Very simple. Both of these were sprayed with Corax white spray, and they were zenithal. So you see the bottoms are much blacker than the tops. Okay, that's how I do all of my models these days. Simple zenithal spray, and then contrast paint, and then I'm done. Here we go. One of these is contrast, one of them is a speed paint. This is the colour test because when I did my good-looking model over there, I realised that although this looks nice, it's not in any way, shape or form a test of speed paints because it was just a few little dobs of their colours over a metallic. If you are not colourblind, you could probably see a difference between these two hues or tints or whatever these words mean. I can't. To me, these are identical. Here we go. This one, this is the contrast. That's the speed paint. Okay? Speed paint, contrast. I hope that tells you something, because it doesn't tell me anything at all. I can't tell the difference. To me, they are identical. I talked to somebody yesterday and they said that the speed paint one looked more something, vibrant, I don't know, whereas the contrast looked a little bit sun-bleached. They are literally identical to me. Hopefully, you could see a difference there. So this is the direct contrast. The other thing to consider is that they're not actually a direct match. So this is the Zealot Yellow from Speed Paint. This is Iyanden Yellow from Contrast. But it's possible that if I use Nasdreg Yellow, it would look, because I believe the Nasdreg does have more orange to it, and so it would look closer to this. These could just be different colours, as opposed to different qualities of the same colour. We then have this cool looking dude here. Now, this is fine, as a little thing. This is essentially a test of metallics and how speed paints work over them. They work exactly the same as contrast paints work over metallics. There you go. Red looks good over gold, blue looks good over silver. That's generally something that I've found. We see the yellows on the tassels again, the red on the gold, I can't remember the name of the blue on the silver, okay? Now, I've done a lot of metallics over silver and over gold. Metallics. A lot of contrast over metallics because it gives a really good look. Speed paints work exactly the same. I realise we're kind of coming to a point where I just have to agree every time that speed paints are just contrast paints. We then come to our little demony boy here. I used him because I had him lying around. Here we see, God, I really hope my camera's focusing. We see a bunch of different colours. They're not in any particular order. I didn't attempt to make a rainbow on this bad boy. That was just a bunch of colours I knew I wanted to use. I knew I wanted to use the yellow, the red, and the blue, and then I just started putting the stuff down. Purely for your own interest, the blues here, this side is the Speed Painter. This side is Talisar Blue from Contrast. They are slightly different colours. The Talisar Blue is ever so slightly lighter. When it comes to the Talisar Blue, I love the Talisar Blue, especially over metallics. So, just again, another little side-by-side, but again, the speed paints are not supposed to be perfect matches. The speed paints are supposed to be their own line, you know. So anyway, what I did is, as I will now hopefully play the footage of, is I put these all down, and then about 12 hours later, I came back and I started rubbing water over it vigorously. Now, we can see there is a little bit of water staining. So something did happen when I started to do that. That's really up to you about how much you care. Because I don't. This would never happen to me. I'm never going to do that. Especially the way I did this was obviously a very unrealistic test. To just grab water and go, that's not something anybody would ever do to their model. That was done just because everybody's talking about how much they, how much they are scared of this horrifying, reactivating paint. To me, I'm fine with it. Because when I paint contrast, it's one thick coat. I don't go back over it. Why would I do that? That's not the point of contrast for me. Okay, let's get down to it. Here's the big difference. And this is the only difference. For me, I do not like painting. I want to get it done as quickly as possible. Speed paint adds an additional step. The beauty of a contrast you've never heard somebody say this before, I realise, but the beauty of this paint is this well at the top of the contrast paint. My brush goes straight into that well and then straight onto the model. Doesn't go anywhere else. I don't wipe it off on a paper towel. I don't put it onto a palette first. I don't thin it. If I have to do any of those things, I'm not going to use contrast paint. Contrast paint is quicker and, more importantly, easier for me to paint. Speed paints are a dropper bottle, which I think if you always have a palette next to you, then this is easy, probably as easy or easier than contrast paint for you because you've already got it going. If you're mixing the use of speed paints as an additional tool alongside normal paints, or if you want that particular hue and you're going to add it into an airbrush, speed paints are, I think, clearly the better choice, undoubtedly, because then their dropper bottle works towards my ultimate goal of making painting faster and easier. So, that's it. There you go. I realise that was a super underwhelming answer that is very obvious, but from everything I did with them, they function identically on the model. They look the same on the model. The only difference is two things. One, cost. If you can get them cheaper than contrast and you're okay with the additional step of putting them onto the palette first, great. Good for you. You should probably buy SpeedPaints then. And then on a kind of a minor side note, GW needs to be knocked down a peg. So if you can buy other products, you probably should. And Games Workshop is very aware of this. As we know from their recent price hikes, they didn't raise the price of any of their hobby stuff. And that's because they know that they are not the sole provider. They don't have the monopoly on that side of the market. So they realized they couldn't get away with it, unlike their models. Probably buy other brands. You know, make Games Workshop actually have to try to make money, as opposed to just coasting because they're the biggest. So I would actually fully recommend SpeedPaints, to the point that I actually bought, pre-purchased, the mega set, whatever it was. I £68 from, I'm going to say Dark Sphere, but it might have been Element, I can't remember. So that's ready, so in March 18th, 20th, whatever, I'm going to have the full SpeedPaint set, which does mean that I will have to invest in a palette, but I'm not going to, because I hate painting. So I just bought a tile. I have a single floor tile, and that's it. That's what I'm going to use. So there you go. As somebody that doesn't like painting, speed paints are identical to contrast paints, but they work out to be a little bit cheaper. But they do add an additional step in this painting process, which I don't like. And that's it. But then, because of moral issues, I'm willing to add that extra step into my hobby painting progress.